Welcome back to the Dads Against the Narrative show, where we cut through all the noise, challenge the status quo, and talk real talk about life, family, and the world all around us. Today, I am joined by a special guest, my wife, Simone Akasha Nofel. And we are going to talk about the mental health issues going on with children, adults, just everything going on in the world with mental health. There's a lot going on. So we'll let her cover that. Anyways, thank you, babe, for being here. Let everyone know how they can get a hold of you, where you're at, how they can follow you, etc.
So my website, you can find all of my offerings and some free resources through kundalinikeys.com, or follow me on Instagram at simone.akasha.
All right. And let's just jump right into it like we normally do. What's your problem with the mental health world today? Since you came from the mental health space, when I met Simone, she was a BCBA, and she could cover what all that is. Um, and I didn't know anything about any of the space of the mental health world except for what the military was teaching me. But then I met Simone, and she was working with children with autism and just doing awesome things. And so, what is your problem with the mental health world?
Yeah, it's so interesting because, yeah, not only was I working in that field for like 12 years, my bachelor's in psychology, my master's is in behavior analysis for the human mind. And it wasn't until being far removed from academia that I realized that there's such a huge missing piece within that world and a codependency, of course, on big pharma and pharmaceuticals. And so, my personal journey is what really woke me up to this reality of being hyper focused on these symptoms and these labels and slapping people with labels. It means then you're slapping them with pills, and there is an epidemic of overuse of pharmaceuticals, and especially within the mental health space. So it starts so early, unfortunately, for so many kids. Once you start producing these chemicals in your body through these pills, it's almost like you have an attachment to it and a dependency. And so when they're started off really young, then their brain doesn't develop in the same way that it could have without it. And then body's natural ability to go through some of these processes gets taken over by these pills. So then when you try to get off of them, it's complete chaos. And so, yeah, I feel like the main issue here is just big pharma, of course, right? It's like we see problems within our clients or patients, and then we say, okay, well, here's a quick fix. And the quick fix isn't even a fix. It's more like a band-aid, or it makes it worse. And that was my personal experience, right? I was misdiagnosed with bipolar disorder many years ago, and I went through a bunch of different medications, and none of them eradicated the symptoms. They only made them worse. And so when I went cold turkey off all my medications, I was kind of like looking for something to hold on to, like kind of like clinging, like what can I do? And I had one person out of all the psychiatrists, out of all of the psychologists, therapists that I worked with, counselors that I worked with, there's only one woman in those that span of about 5 years that said you could actually rewire your brain and create an environment for yourself to heal, and then in that time these new neural pathways will form and you won't operate in the same way. And so those symptoms of depression, of mania, of anxiety won't be your default anymore. And I remember when she told me this, I was like, what are you talking about? This whole time in this journey, people would be like, yeah, this is your medication. You'll have to do this for the rest of your life. Like, just get used to it. And it's just a chemical imbalance in your brain, but that's all bullshit. And when I had her say that, she couldn't give me a timestamp. And that's the problem, I think, that we have today, too, is that people need to know. Like, they have to know. And like these arbitrary things like time, right? Where it's like, okay, well, if I'm not going this Western medicine pharmaceutical route, well, then how long will it take me to rewire my brain? And it's not about that. It's about each person's journey being so unique to them. And do you have the confidence and do you have the resilience to go through it without knowing when that like in time is? Um, I remember her saying, like, it could, for some people, it takes 10 weeks. For some people, it takes 10 months. It could be even longer. And so, yeah, we kind of evolved as in humanity to be operating from our prefrontal lobe, where it's like always about logic and knowing and analyzing, and it's like we've lost this ability to operate from our primal brain. And the primal brain is what would allow us to go through those unknown, going through the mystery with more ease. And so for me, I was just already done with, pharmaceuticals. So there was like, okay, well, I have no choice but to try something extra,
Yeah.
right? Like, what do I do? Change my lifestyle habits, change what I'm eating, change what I'm consuming, auditorially, visually, everything, and rebalance my hormones. And sure enough, within, I'd say, I think I met that practitioner around October, November, and
That was in Washington?
in Washington State, yeah.
Because I remember that. Yeah.
That was through the military. And then by February was the last, February of 2020 was the last episode I ever had of depression. And I think it wasn't until like June, July where I was like,
I remember.
is it,
You're like, this is
like, what's happening?
You were going through like a hard something. The baby was born, our
Yeah.
oldest was born, and I remember you were going through something.
I think like, you being gone.
You were like depressed or something,
Yeah.
or sad, and you're like, wait, this is what it normally feels
Yeah,
like.
so
Like
it was.
I don't have to go further or deeper, and
That spiral out. Yeah.
yeah,
It was that. It was around, because you were gone. Yeah, it was summer. It was around June or July. I was a new mom, a new baby, and something came up. Whatever, something in life happened, and I felt like real sadness for the real time. Like, this is how normal people feel sadness. Like, not spiraling into depression. And I feel like that was the day where I, after shifting out of that funk, and I was just celebrating. Like, I was celebrating in my sadness too. Like, yeah, I'm feeling sadness, but it's like nice. And coming out of that, I like, yeah, celebrated.
yeah, that was wild.
Amazing.
I remember the doctor too. I've told that story with the doc about the doctor. So it was the first time I remember you hearing it, and then after it started happening, you're like, my neurological patterns must be switching and changing and firing on different levels. And I mean, it's all of your epigenetics too that you were studying at that time. When you learn about epigenetics and your entire environment and how that affects you, you see why we're getting attacked in the environment.
Yeah, and you also see beyond the bullshit of like, oh, one of the things that really just is like my pet peeve. I hate when people say this is like, oh, like, I have ADHD because my parents had ADHD, and that's just like how I am. I'm like, I get it, like, because we're conditioned, right? Like, it's not your fault. It's not people's fault that they think that just because their parent had diabetes that they're gonna have diabetes. But it's like, no, we are such sovereign beings, and when we give ourselves the time and space to go through the self healing process, like, we can turn on and off disease. And so if you're making fucking piss poor choices and you're turning on that switch for disease, but then you change and you become more aligned in health, right? In wholeness, then that disease switch turns off. And it's really can be simple. Like, I really don't believe that there's a diagnosis that like is incurable. Of course, disease takes lives, and that is sure, that is fact. And it's just different intensities, right? So like if you catch things sooner, of course, it's going to be easier to reverse it. But like me, like I had severe mental health, like
that was crazy.
Hospitalized more than once, and
crazy.
I was able to come out from it. And I think that's too why I feel such passion and fire about this. Is like if I can do it, then
no, for real. I think a lot of people don't understand like how bad. When I met Simone, people would be like, "Dude, you're nuts. You're gonna marry this lady with bipolar syndrome, and she's horribly going up and down." And it was a roller, and it was tough because I never met someone like that, and it was really, really difficult the first year. Plus, we both were just kind of spiraling in our lives and not really had a purpose or meaning in life. I don't think we really I talked about, I guess, in the military, I thought my purpose was being a leader. Once I got out, I realized, wow, I am a leader already, but that's not my purpose or meaning in life. It's I had to add to that. What about leadership? Who? When? Like all these questions of when and how leadership came into it. But what I wanted to go back to really quick was how you're talking about we lost the ability of primal thinking, and maybe that's the problem is that we've been attacked so much on so many ways from food, from our water, from our air that I can only think from the prefrontal lobe, and they want it that way. Like the whoever's running the world, right? And they want it so it's easy to manipulate people. And then also people who are feeling sick or ill or mentally ill, they just overwhelm themselves with it. And then now it's become like a virtuous badge of honor to have some kind of ADHD, OCD, blah, 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 just add on to it. And I think that's a problem that we're really facing in the world too, is that we're seeing that these kids will go through all kinds of problems and then we just label it. But have we also put them into like physically moving their bodies, getting out in nature, eating healthy foods, and teaching them the proper mechanics to overcome difficult situations? And sometimes I think that's just the problem, is that so many people haven't been uncomfortable in their lives. And so they get one little friction area and it's like, oh, I have a mental health problem. To me, I don't know. I was never big in the mental health space, guys, until I met Simone. Even in the military, all the classes they forced me to go to, I'd be like, dude, this is kind of like, I don't know, a bunch of pussies. And so, like, I met Simone. I'm like, all right, you know what? I'm gonna feel more empathetic towards people and feel out. And over the last like 8 years of being together, it's kind of like reversed for me. It's like, I don't know. I think I just don't believe all these stupid labels that people are putting on. It's like, I don't know, maybe you just need to go through something more difficult in life and realize that you're okay. Because that's, I think, how a lot of people in the old days handled the situation, is that you did get depressed or you did get sad, but you would go back to work and work was tough, or you'd, have to go hunt and kill your own meal. And it's like your life's on the line. So you'd forget about that depression because you're doing things that are so difficult that when you overcome them, it's like, oh, I feel good to be alive. And then that gratefulness comes in. And just one last thing before I pass it back to you is like, I feel like so many people don't reflect on their situations and say, how the fuck did I get in this situation? Is this really who I am? And is this my identity? So can you walk us through like how we're seeing the world change with now people are, their identity has become their mental health issue. And what do you think of that?
Yeah. This identity thing is so powerful because when we decide to take on a label or an identity, that becomes our default, right? And so whether it's even some beautiful labels, right, that might not even be serving you, like if you're a mother of five and you're feeling burnt out every day, then like maybe don't lead with that. Like just lead with who you are, what your name is, what your passions are. And so that's the same thing when it comes to these mental health diagnoses. And when I was in school learning about the DSM, this is like the Bible for psychology, right? Where all the diagnoses are. They upgrade it, they add more all the time. And there's such a blur between many of the different disorders and diagnoses where maybe there's like one diagnosis that has five symptoms and the other one has those same five but like maybe two more than that, and it's like they just keep making up different names for these different symptoms when they're all piled together. And again, when you're only orienting to a symptom, you're not getting to the root cause, and that's the problem with the mental health system. But back to this like identity thing is, words are so powerful. Words are spells, right? When we speak something, we can speak it into existence and in many forms. And so if you're going around saying, I'm sick, right, then you're going to stay in that state of sickness. And so, like, having it in your bio on social media isn't the best thing to do. And I understand that some people want to talk about it and share their experience and help other people, but it's like the sick leading the sick, the blind leading the blind. Like what? Like we're keeping the cycle of disease flowing when you're completely revolving your whole world around the symptoms that you're experiencing. And it takes the focus off the resolution, right? Because you're just so um, yeah, I'm comfortable in being that label or that person who's advocating for these type of people. And so I kind of want to go back to about what you were saying of like how people dealt with sadness and depression and challenge back in the day versus now, because I don't agree with you in the fact that they handle it in the right way. Like shoving it to the side and going to work and pushing through it isn't also how you handle it. Like I think,
Yeah.
Just like the color of your eyes, the type of hair you have gets passed down in our DNA, so does these unresolved and unprocessed emotions. And so if our great grandparents went through war and famine and whatever, like that, the way they handled it emotionally will get passed down. So if they didn't resolve it themselves and they shoved it to the side, then it gets passed down generation after generation too. And so it's like finding, coming back to what you're saying about the basics. That's really where the magic is. The basics. Are you getting enough sleep at night? Adequate sleep? Are you hydrating? Are you eating nourishing, nutrient dense foods? Are you tapped into your pleasure center? Like all these different things that are like the basic foundation of life. Like, are you doing it? Moving your body? You mentioned it. It's like that's how I reversed my symptoms. That's how I cleared out all of that shit. And so it's like 5 years later, I went from having 7 to 8 episodes of depression a year, sometimes, layered with suicide ideation, sometimes that meant hospitalization. And so from going from that to this, like it was the basics. It was me understanding applied epigenetics when I went through that training and did preventative health and, understanding that you can create the life that you want. And that's the part that a lot of people are missing. Once we get that label slapped on us, we just think that's our life and we are disempowered. And that's again what they want, right? They want us to be disempowered. They want us to feel like we're trapped and stuck. And so it's like, how can you get out of that stuckness? It's a mindset shift. Once you realize, oh, I actually am controlling my life. I have the ability to say I'm not going to be eating McDonald's and Doritos all day. I'm going to be feeding fueling my body with wholesome foods. It's like that's when the change happens when you shift
Big
your
time.
mindset.
Yeah, I think people just don't empower themselves enough. Honestly, they don't. And what I mean by that is that when you empower yourself, you're looking at all those aspects. You're looking at like, hey, is the air clean where I'm living? Okay, they're not really doing a lot of chemtrails. We're okay. Is the water clean? Is the food locally sourced? Can we get locally sourced food and seasonal? So it's like you really empower yourself to control all of your health, and then you're working out and you're really researching that instead of taking all your time and looking into politics or something that doesn't matter. What matters is this body, this life. And I think so many people are so distracted with so many things that the one thing that gets pushed to the side every time is their own health.
Yeah, it's like once you have a healthy body, then go on and do all the fuckery you want. Like I've always master that. Like master your body, master your mind.
Yeah.
And feel like you're in alignment and kind of back to what you were saying with having purpose too. Like that's a huge part. Like a lot of times we think of our physical body, our physical health, our mental emotional health, but it's also like our spiritual health. And part of our spiritual health is that sense of belonging and purpose. And so when you have those things, it's like you have nothing but success. And then, of course, challenges in life happen where you know, get in contact with somebody who might be sick and you're now sick or whatever. Chemicals make you sick like it did me last week.
Right.
Like whatever it is, and it's like you are more resilient when you have those basics down and when you are so centered in your path, right? And so if you're going through these challenges mentally, like you're not centered on your path, and it might feel like that in the moment, but when you come out of that hindsight, you're like, oh shit, like that's why I was misaligned. And that's kind of how it was for me in my work, right? Like I quit work and I just focused on my health, and then maybe like a year later of not working, I'm like looking back, I'm like, okay, do I want to go back to what I'm doing? I'm like, fuck no, like I loved it in the time,
It was
and
good
then
money.
back at it, good money.
That's how they trap you again.
Yeah, and so it's just anyone in that world, like kind of coming back to you're talking about like ADHD, autism, like all these things, and a lot of my clients that I was supporting at the time, of course, they had the diagnosis of autism, but they also had other um, labels as well, right? So they would have like autism and ADHD or autism and like all these different things. And it's just like I would go into these homes, right? And most of my clients were under the age of 20. So from like 2 to 22 was the range, but most of them were between like 5 and 15. And I would go into these homes, I'd be doing my assessment, and it's like taking a snapshot on like their daily life, right? I'm filling out their forms, but there's nothing about their environment. So I'm sitting in somebody's home and I'm seeing like all this shit food on their counter, or like, what are those things called? I don't even know what they're calling them, where you plug them into the wall, they smell good.
Oh,
things.
yeah.
Like all those things.
The odor things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's like, well, how about like, where's the section in this assessment for that? And that's where I remember when I was making the decision, like, am I going to go back into this world okay, maybe I can make a change and do my own thing where I have like my own assessment and make it more holistic. And then it's like, okay, but then I'm breaking the regulations, right? And so then if I'm board certified, I mean, there's a whole board that regulates what I'm doing, but this board is the foundation is sickness, right? And they're looking out for that. And then and then the insurance companies, I made my way up in the company and my positions where I'm now working with the insurance companies and I'm seeing how fucked that is. And I'm like, this, I can't do this anymore. Like, oh, it's like you can't fix a broken system. And that's when you just need to crumble that shit and start, from ground zero.
And I think a lot of people, I'm going to inject here really quick, see a lot of our content online, my wife's and mine, and we both fight a lot of the system. And you hear us maybe go from homeschool to politics to health to vaccines. They're all kind of tied together. It's like all the systems were created to fail us and not help us in any which way. And that's the problem I'm seeing today. And then imagine, we'll bring it back now to where we were, is all this information and all of these ways that you're thinking and learning as an adult, now put that onto a child and say it's unbelievable. It's crazy to me to think that we would just throw these at kids as if it's nothing. It's like a dartboard. Just throw it up there. Oh, he has ADHD. He's ADD. He's just give him something so that way we can get him in the system and get him trapped. And then the parents, you're the ones I blame because you do no research. It's like you did no research to get them vaccinated. You did no research anytime you went to a doctor. You did no research on any of it. And don't get me wrong, I know you could be busy and you have your reasons, but that's our job as parents. You shouldn't become a parent if you can't do the research. And I'm one of those people who failed also in the beginning. Simone didn't want the first kid, our oldest, to be vaccinated and or circumcised. I didn't know any difference. I just was a part of the system. I was programmed, right? And I was circumcised. I was vaccinated and totally fine. So he got the first day vaccines and circumcised. Never went back to the doctor pretty much after that. We went for one checkup and we're like, all they're going to do is push vaccines. And I kind of started moving away from it. And so then eventually it was just like, I started researching. And that's when it really hit me. I'm like, fuck, I was so lost. I was so confused. And I wish that's what someone told me. Go research all these things that any doctor says about your kids and see how you can fix them within just your environment. There's so much that's just fixed with the environment. Like you said from the beginning, it's like your kid's ADHD. Is he? Or is all boy or are all boys ADHD because they have high energy because they're supposed to have high energy and they're supposed to be outside playing in the sun and moving their bodies and that's how they learn and grow and learn how to control their bodies and function properly. So I don't know. I'm very opposed to the ADHD thing. I was labeled ADD my whole life. They put me on Ritalin at like 9 years old. My mom's like, no, not happening. And then the army put me on Adderall at 29 years old. So it's like 20-year difference. And my mom already taught me to like live with my extra energy. What do I do with it? Oh no, I have extra energy. Like I'll go play sports, do whatever I want, stay active. So it's different. It's like we just all of a sudden we want. It's like you see parents that want the labels. That's the weird part. It's like, dude, you want
an excuse, right?
Yeah.
And then it's like, oh, my kid just has ADHD. Like, oh, they're just special, and it's like, then it takes the responsibility off the parent. So it makes sense, when, and if they just want their kid to sit down and shut up, it's like, okay, let me give them this medication so they can quiet the fuck down. And that's super sad too. So it's like whatever way you look at it and the reasons for it, it's really sad. And it comes down to then again is like, kind of circling back to this mental health thing, it's like a lot of parents are in that state because they don't have support system for themselves. And so if you yourself are not centered or you yourself don't have a support system and you rely on the system to be your support system, right? Instead of the village that we no longer have in our society. So it's like, again, going back to not being in the state of victimhood of like, we could just sit here and be like, oh, we have no village. Like we kind of do, but like back then, right? We could have been like, oh, we have no village, da 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 da. But it's like, what can you do then to create? Do you start your own group? Do you put yourself out there more? Like, what is it that you can do to find that support system so your kids don't feel like you're so much? And then, of course, your own nervous system, right? Like, I teach this shit and I still get dysregulated sometimes. So it's like people who aren't in this world, it's like they are just constantly in a state of dysregulation when they're parenting. And so if you're like sitting there, just feeling like your only choice is to medicate your kid, there's like first you gotta get yourself right.
Yeah.
Get yourself right.
I literally, so a lot of you guys know out there that I run the Warrior Path. It's like the Warrior Kid Club. It used to be called, now it's the Warrior Path. But this week, the kids are or no, the parents, I gave them assignment where they have to focus on one breath as their kid is being wild or whatever, misbehaving. So that's their assignment. Is you need to take one breath before you reach your child. So as you're going towards your child, you're going to regulate yourself. So that way your child can feel the regulated parent come in and not this energy that's just like overwhelming, aggressive. And we've all been there. I've been there, but most of the time I'm not there because I am conscious and I'm intentionally thinking that as like, all right, my son's acting wild. That means I need to calm down so I can help him calm down. So it's really it's a weird, strange thing that I look at with parenting, and with the health problems and all of it. It's just like we're so egocentric that it's like parents still are so egocentric that they put themselves first and that they're godplex over their kids and they know everything and the kids know nothing. And it's like, why don't you just check that to the side and learn with your kids, relearn with your kids, forget what you were ever taught. You know nothing, and you and your kids are going to learn together. And it's like if you start at ground zero with them, you're going to find out that you're going to put them first most of the time. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying don't have your own time and take care of yourself. 100% do that. But I'm saying when it comes to your parenting style, you need to come with an approach that is best benefiting the child, not you. So it's not about regulating yourself to make you calm in the situation. It's regulating yourself to stay calm so your child is also going to be calm. So that means you need to learn new tools, right? And practice them, maybe. And I think that's a problem with a lot of what I'm seeing in parents and a lot of people that I don't like watching their parenting style. I'm like, dude, like this is horrible. Like you're a parent of three and your kids are just going berserk. That you have no control. There's no discipline, and the parents are on their phones. And then you're just going to label your kid some bullshit thing. So then you can just write it off without being a parent. And so their behavior now is their problem because they have a label for it. And it's not on you as a parent to teach them the proper way. And then they grow up, and then what happens? The same thing happens over and over. And that's why this podcast exists. It's because we don't want that to happen. We want every parent to really step it up and really be conscious with their choices for their family.
Yeah, and I think kind of what you were just saying about like you kind of write it off and you use these labels as excuses. And I kind of when you were saying that brought up this point of like neurodivergence. We talk about this often of like this label, neurodivergence, and it's like if you really get to the etymology of this word, like we all are diverse in our neurology. So then what makes one person neurodiverse, not the other? Like if we're all different, right? And so again, it's like with this way of saying, okay, my kid has a special need to be able to do X, Y, and Z differently, which is fine. And again, it's like you can have these needs for your children, whether it's like a sensitivity to sound or sensitivity, like whatever it is, they can have those needs and those sensitivities without it being their full identity. And so then it's like, and this is like totally off topic, but a parallel example of like being Black in America, right? Like I could be like, woe is me. I'm off to like a harder start and I'm just gonna always be on like welfare and food stamps. And it's like, or you can come with a different perspective and say, I'm going to work harder to prove that I'm not going to be stuck in this, in this path anymore. And I'm not going to say just because I'm darker skinned that I won't get the chances that other people do, because then it gets in my mind, right? And then I'm going to show up to this job interview thinking, oh, I have to impress, and then maybe I'm out of character. I'm not really who I am. And so, yeah, it's really unfortunate that there's a lot of kids being raised right now that their parents are just telling them, that you're neurodivergent and that's it, right? Instead of like, you have these sensitivities, and here's how we're going to help you get rid of them, right? Overcome them. And that can look like detoxing, right? Like that's a huge thing, whether it's heavy metals. Like most of the time when people have these sensitivities, whether it's to light, sound, different textures, these things that often come up for people who are on the autism spectrum or like ADHD, these things that come up for them, again, is reversible. We're taught that they're not. They're taught that, oh, we're just neurodivergent and this is how we're going to have to modify life. Yes, of course, modify life for your kid, but wouldn't you rather just eradicate the issue? You know, heavy metal detox, deworming, parasite cleanse, like all these things have been proven time and time again to reduce or get rid of these sensitivities. And so, again, instead of just finding these as excuses and to make life maybe easier, even though it's actually not, like, wouldn't you rather just have, you know, a typically functioning and, you know, developmentally consistent human that you're raising, and that, yeah, just it's more effort in the beginning. Don't get me
That's
wrong.
it. That's it.
More effort,
It's effort.
and then it pays off.
Yeah, but effort's very difficult for a lot of parents. And I get it because there's a lot of parents out there that are struggling, right? Society's created now this like real catch 22 where it's like you cut back work, you could not afford bills, and then you can't be with your kids as much, or you work and keep it going, and then the weekends you get to be with your kids. It's like the system is now designed so strongly, and they're put into a corner so hard that I think it's very difficult for a lot of parents to dig out of it. And I just want to say with that, you can do little things still to tweak it if you're in that position. And I know it's difficult because I have some buddies that are in that position. It really sucks to watch people struggling that much. But you can still do things. Work on your own mental, work on your physical. You don't need a gym. I don't go to a gym. I do YouTube videos, and you can do burpees, you can do push-ups, you can do sit-ups, you can eat properly, you can fast. You can just do things to take care of yourself so your kids can watch that. And then that way you start setting a positive example in one area. And now, after you get a good routine, go to the next area. All right, where's the next spot I could work? All right, you know what? I haven't been a great entrepreneur. I want my kids to be an entrepreneur because this lifestyle of being an entrepreneur has not worked pretty well for me. So let's set them up for success and having their own company and how to take care of finances, how to run a business, how to sell things, how to market things, because those are skills that are going to be around forever, no matter what. So a lot of times we need to look at that as like, are we handing our kids the keys to success, or are we handing our kids the keys to just fail? And there's no keys not even there because they're just going to fail because you're failing. So,
Yeah, kind of going back to what you were saying of like habit stacking, just like some attainable ways.
Yeah.
Whether you're struggling with your mental health or maybe it's the mental health of your child, it's like habit stacking in those little ways is so significant. There's also science that really shows how easily it can be when you start with one area, whether it's like movement, right? And you nail your movement practice for 10 consecutive days, and then you habit stack, which brings another one in, right? And now you're like getting rid of all processed sugars, something like that. And you just keep doing that. After you master one thing, you just stack onto another one. And a lot of the things that you can do to really improve your health, your overall health, and definitely your mental health is free. Like, and actually some of it can save you money in the long run. So, a lot of times people say, oh, like you're just privileged, like you're able to do that, or you have enough resources to do that. And like, actually, you can do a lot of it in pretty simple ways.
And a lot of people who say that, like, you're privileged, people say we're privileged because we get to homeschool. Well, what do we lose out on? We both have degrees that we could be using. We both could have jobs that are making 100,000 plus. So we decided that $200,000 a year wasn't, not worth our family. And you have to make that decision for your own family. So that means we had to rebudget and live in a smaller style, right? That's okay. Because guess what? We get to be with our kids all day. We get to be with each other. We get to create the life that we're supposed to create and have and lead. So, don't give me that shit that we're privileged. We worked very hard. We took many, many risks to get to where we're at. But you have to take your own risks in your own life for you to see success. No one successful is going to be like, I never took a risk. That's ridiculous. Every single person who's successful has taken a risk somehow or another. And a lot of people just stay in that very complacent comfort zone, and they just don't want to get out of it. And a lot of times that's what it takes is just maybe go do something hard. Maybe go train for a marathon, go do a Spartan race, go live in the woods for 7 days by yourself or with some friends and figure life out. When you put yourself in hard positions, you realize the basics is all you really need. And love, like we're always trying to get to that energy of love. Is happiness. Love is joy. Love is, being present. That's love. So a lot of times fathers don't want to talk about that though. Fathers think it's like they think of intimacy of love, or they think of like the feminine energy of love, and they forget that love's like all the good things. And so a lot of times when you clear your head and get that clouded mess away, and you go through a struggle, you come back clear headed every single time. I love that about the military. That was one great thing. I come back from the field like, shit, I know exactly what I want right now. And I was more positive. I was out in nature a lot. So a lot of people are disconnected from nature, from just the earth, and again, by design. But definitely, you need to get back to the basics so your kids can get back to the basics and just learn that, hey, this is how life is. It's very easy and it can be fun.
And kids love the basics.
Kids love the basics. They love the basics.
Simplicity, right? It's like it's embedded in our DNA as humans to have this simple life, and we just tend to overcomplicate it. Yeah. And of course, being born into this modern society, it makes it harder to be simple.
Yeah.
But when we just talk about like simplicity with our oldest, even like all those things that we're talking about, like the basics, it's like he's nailed it and he's set up for success because of the basics, right? Like, okay, what were you doing? You're playing your Game Boy for an hour. Okay, how about you get outside for an hour now? And he might complain a little bit in the beginning, but then he's like, finding little bugs and like doing things that are cool as shit. And I'm like, oh yeah, like. And then he'd be like, has it been time yet? And then the next thing you know, like he doesn't even want to come back inside.
Kids can't learn to be bored unless you put them in the position to be bored. Mm-hmm. And then when they're bored, they find out that they have the power within to create. And then when they start creating, what are they doing? Their neuro pathways are firing and they're growing in ways that we couldn't do that for them. They had to go through the boredom to get to that level of, creation. And that's a really, really cool thing. So I definitely think that's it. All right. Well, we're going to slowly summarize this or bring it to close. The reason I say summarize is because how this show works, and my wife doesn't know because she doesn't listen to the show, is our guest closes out the show. So I'm going to hit you with my final word, and I'm going to pass it over to my wife for the final word, the very final word. So, guys, thank you for tuning in. Babe, thank you for being here and blessing us with all your knowledge. And again, kundalinikeys.com, Simone.Akasha on Instagram. Guys, go check out my wife. She's super cool. Not only is she beautiful, but she posts some really cool things. And if you're into like Kundalini and the spiritual space, she's definitely crushing it over there. So you could go on my page and find all of her information too, but it will also be in the show notes on YouTube and on all the platforms. So last thing I just want to say for my words is, guys out there, it's a real problem going on with the mental health problems of the world, from boys allowed to be girls to ADHD to everyone's autistic to blah, 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 blah. There's so much going on and it's hard to keep up with. Let's try to reground dads. Let's try to recenter our families and really say, are we going to play this game with the government or the medical industry? No, maybe we shouldn't. Maybe we just need to stay grounded, empower ourselves, empower our families, learn a little bit. You don't need to learn it all in one day, guys. And AI is around now, so you can all your questions that you really want to ask, you can ask AI, and then look at other resources from there and ask AI for resources even if you want. So it's definitely much easier, but we need to get grounded. And I feel like that's a big problem, is that us fathers are not interested in our kids' mental health. We're not interested in, the emotions of being a parent. Well, start getting interested in all of that, because that's part of being a parent. That's part of being a great father. And I know all of you guys out there can do it. And moms, thank you for tuning in to Moms Against the Narrative special episode. And I'm going to hand it over to my wife for the final word. Thank you again for being here, baby.
Thank you for asking me to do this. It's fun. Definitely forgot and didn't really realize about this closing statement, but I really do want to just stress, like, for people who are going through it right now, like there might be people listening to this episode who are currently struggling with their mental health, or somebody close to them is struggling with their mental health. And, if it's you yourself, I just want to encourage you again to look at your belief system behind what's going on. Like, what do you actually believe is happening within your body, within your mind, within your spirit? And do you feel like you can ever overcome it? Because if you feel like you'll never overcome it, then you won't. And so, again, with that mindset, and then if it's somebody else in your life that's struggling with their mental health, I want you to also just realize that what you say and do can impact them so significantly. And so, if you are, also playing into this label, then you're enabling them to continue with this spiral. And then maybe you share this episode with them, or maybe you just reach out to me, and I can get connected with this person and share my personal story of how I moved through these things. Because I've supported so many clients who have had mental health issues that feel empowered after working with me after some time. And so, again, time, so relative, right? So don't get so hyper focused on that, like, 1 hour of therapy is gonna like solve the day, and it's like, no. And so, yeah, be your own savior, and empower the people around you to do the same.
Yeah. All right. Thank you for being here. Guys, the only way we grow is to share the show. Let us know down in the comments what you think, and don't forget to share the show. Thank you. Later.